But the point is you can control the amount of volume you're delivering. So consequently, when you do your plateau pressure, let me go to the next page. When we do our plateau, notice that in pressure, the reason that we don't see a plateau like we did in volume control is because in pressure, theoretically, this is your plateau pressure, assuming that we have the right inspiratory time set. And if I do an inspiratory hold, indeed, we see exactly the same plateau pressure that we do a peak airway pressure in that case. But if we're like this, now we see a difference in our plateau because our inspiratory time isn't set the way it should. So in theory, you can look at your plateau, and as long as your I time is set fairly close to what it should be, you can say that your plateau is the same as your peak airway pressure without having to do the maneuver. So that talks a little bit about pressure control, and now I alluded to PRVC, so let's look at the waveform in PRVC. So we will go to, or before we go there, as we talked about earlier, if the doctor said that he wanted to maintain a 400 cc tidal breath, you could maintain that by adjusting your pressure up a little bit in this case because it's only 326 cc's. And so I keep increasing until I see 400. And then if the compliance gets worse, now it's 400. But now if the compliance gets better, now I'm delivering more volume than I want, so I have to turn the pressure back down again. So in theory, if we stood here all day with our hand on the pressure knob and adjusted the pressure to maintain a certain volume, what mode would we call this? Well, we would call it pressure regulated volume control, or PRVC. So that's all PRVC is nothing more than pressure control ventilation, because we're delivering a constant pressure with a decelerating flow pattern. And in that decelerating flow pattern, flow is always variable, so the patient's comfortable and can get whatever flow he wants. But in PRVC, we're delivering exactly the same flow. I mean, not exactly the same flow, we're exactly the same waveforms. So you'll see after the first breath that we have a constant pressure and a decelerating flow. But instead of us having to adjust the pressure up and down to maintain a particular volume, you've simply told the ventilator what volume you want to target, and the ventilator then will adjust the pressure to maintain that particular volume. So notice that the ventilator found the same peak airway pressure that I found before to deliver that 400 cc tidal breath. So other than that algorithm that's in the ventilator that's adjusting pressure up and down, the waveforms are exactly the same as they are in pressure control. So we are using pressure control when we're in PRVC. This is pressure control, but you can think of it as variable pressure control, or you standing at the ventilator adjusting the pressure up and down to maintain that volume. Now, the one thing that we've learned over the years in terms of using PRVC or any other volume targeted mode, it works well to maintain a particular volume in those patients that are not rambunctious or not, working hard with the ventilator, not interacting hard with the ventilator. It also works well when you're not restricted to a low tidal volume strategy. But in the event that you're restricted by policy or protocol to a low tidal volume strategy, or your patient is somewhat rambunctious in interacting significantly with the ventilator, PRVC becomes problematic. Because if you set me up originally and I'm somewhat sedated and I'm getting the volume that I want, but now I begin to come out of sedation, and this is a low tidal volume for me, let's say, that I would be more comfortable at 600, but because of your low tidal volume strategy, you want to maintain 400, I begin to wake up and now I'm pulling because I'm somewhat air hungry. So as I pull, notice I'm trying to get more volume, and the ventilator initially delivers more volume, but because it says I'm delivering this greater volume, I have to now lower the pressure because I want to target this volume. So what happens is, at a time where I'm really wanting more support from the ventilator. The ventilator is actually withdrawing support from me. It's lowering my pressure. And as a result, if I have a lower pressure, the ventilator doesn't have to deliver as much flow to get to that lower pressure point. And as a result, I'm being flow starved. So when you're using a low tidal volume strategy, or you have a patient that's interacting significantly with the machine, you'll find people say, oh, PRVC doesn't work on some of my patients. And it's because they're struggling, because they've pulled the pressure down, and the ventilator is doing what it can. It's saying, I have to deliver 400, but look at the pressure, and as a result of that lower pressure, less flow is being delivered. So consequently, you have one of two choices, or three choices. You can knock the patient out, heavily sedate them, so you can have your way with him and do whatever you want with the ventilator, or you can increase his target so that you're giving him actually what he wants, but in that case, you may be giving him more than the, quote, order to deliver, but now he's much more comfortable, and now his work of breathing goes way down because he doesn't have to pull as hard to get the volume that he wants. Or simply go back to the mode of pressure control, where you set a constant pressure that the ventilator is not going to regulate from, and an appropriate icon. And the patient now can get whatever flow and volume he wants on each and every breath. Now the problem with pressure control is the fact that although he can get whatever he wants, he may be getting a greater volume than what's ordered, and you have to explain to the doctor, well, he was struggling. His blood pressure was up, he was struggling when he was in PRVC because you wanted a low tidal volume, but he wants this volume. You could turn the pressure down, just like PRVC did, and when you do, he's going to have to continue to struggle to get flow based on that lower pressure. So in some cases, you can't do anything about the situation, particularly when you're hamstrung, to say, I don't care what you have to do, I'm not going to sedate the patient, but I only want you to give him 400 cc's per breath. And that, well, there's nothing you can do about it if they're not going to sedate him. And you can't use PRV or pressure control, so you have to either use volume control, in that case set a flow rate high enough to satisfy his flow demand, but he still won't be able to get the volume that he wants. So the other thing to talk about in PRVC is how does the pressure limit work? We know that in our conventional modes, like pressure control and pressure or volume control, we have an upper pressure limit, and this is not where we usually set it, but we have an upper pressure limit that we set so that it's kind of a fail-safe, so that when the patient hits that, the ventilator will pop off and not deliver that pressure to protect the lung. So when we're in pressure control, if the doctor said, well, yeah, you can use pressure control and adjust the pressure to maintain a tidal volume of 400 cc's, but his compliance is going to get worse over time, and you can adjust the pressure to maintain that 400 cc's, but as you adjust it, I don't want you to go any higher than, say, 35 centimeters water pressure peak before you call me and let me know that you're no longer able to deliver a 400 cc tidal breath. That will tell me that the compliance has gotten so bad now that we have to take some other measures. But at least I know that I'm not going to be giving him too much pressure because I've ordered you to stop turning the knob at 35. The ventilator is still doing the best it can at delivering the volume that you want, in this case, let's say 400 cc's, but we just can't do it because the lung has become so non-compliant that I can't deliver the 400 cc's. So our option now is letting the doctor know that he could ask us or order us to increase the pressure higher so that he wants to maintain normal carbia, or we can say we're going to tolerate a higher CO2 and protect the lung by not going any higher than a pressure of 35. So in pressure control, it's up to us then to stop turning the knob, the pressure knob, at a certain point in time, and the ventilator can still deliver that volume. In PRVC, since now we've given control up, in essence, to the ventilator, to deliver that volume. What happens now in terms of this pressure limit and all of that? And a lot of people say, well, you just set your upper pressure limit, and which is true, but there's a little nuance about setting that upper pressure limit when you're in PRVC. So right now we found that it takes approximately 35 or 25 centimeters of water pressure total to deliver the 400 cc tidal breath that we've got targeted here. Now as the compliance gets worse, so my compliance just got worse, so the ventilator goes, uh-oh, I'm only delivering 232, so I have to start increasing the pressure to maintain the 400, so it increases the pressure, right? So how do we tell the ventilator that we don't want to go any higher than, let's say, 35 centimeters of water pressure? So in PRVC, what we would do, if that was our order or our protocol to say no higher than 35, what we would do is set our upper pressure limit at 40 centimeters of water pressure. Because in PRVC, the rule is that the ventilator will not allow the pressure to go any higher than 5 centimeters of water pressure below whatever we set our upper pressure limit or our pop-off at. So as the compliance gets worse, the ventilator has to deliver more and more pressure to maintain the volume. So in this case, I'm only at 32 at this point, but now you see the pressure's creeping up to 33, and now it goes to 34. So when we get to 35, the ventilator, in essence, is stop turning the knob, okay? It's not turning the knob any higher because it can't deliver. So after the third breath, the ventilator says regulation pressure limit. It's saying, I'd like to deliver the volume you've asked me to, but I can't because you haven't allowed me to go any higher than 5 centimeters below whatever you set that at. So I'm giving you this pressure limit alarm. Now, I'm doing the best I can still. I'm not terminating the I time prematurely. I'm not popping off. I'm just not allowing the pressure to go any higher. If the patient coughed, it would look like this because he is hitting his upper pressure limit at 40. And you can see that it's red and the ventilator's popping off, not delivering nearly the tidal volume that you want. But as the PRVC, as you get these incremental changes in pressure, the volume or the pressure won't go any higher than 5 centimeters below that. So just like in pressure control, you have a decision to make. You tell the doctor, I can't deliver the volume, what do you want to do? Do you want to increase the amount of volume or decrease the amount of volume that you can deliver, or do we want to increase the amount of pressure that we're allowed to deliver, or do we want to just stay where we're at, not change anything? Well, if you want to stay where you're at, when you're in PRVC, you're always going to have that alarm going off, which is going to be problematic for the nurses and the patient to constantly hear that alarm. So in that case, you're going to have to go back to pressure control, set your pressure control level at the level that gives you the 35, and then in that case you won't be able to deliver the volume that you want, but the ventilator won't be attempting to regulate the pressure up and down anymore. You get what you get, and then when compliance improves, then you're delivering more volume than you want, then you can begin to turn your pressure back down again. But in PRVC, it will happen automatically. But as I said, if your patient is interactive with the ventilator, PRVC can be problematic because you can't use that when a patient is really pulling, and you'll have to use a ventilator or the mode that allows constant pressure but still allows flow to be variable, and you can deliver the volume that you want. So that's a description of graphics associated with the 3 basic modes that we deal with.